There is no way that anybody you follow can report the information without bias. If they're telling you that, that's an outright lie.
Critical thinking is the ability to take each autonomous thought as an individual and peel back the layers of that point, yes, and then see where you land.
Things that he didn't agree with, the reason why is because it's rooted in our faith.
A little less words sometimes speaks volumes. Like less words, more action.
True.
Like, let's not burn it down. Let's get together and pray and worship and show the world that we are called to look different. We are called to respond different. God changes our hearts. We're hurt and sad and there's some anger there, but our response looks entirely different.
Yes. Welcome to the Boom Clap podcast where culture and conviction collide. I'm Rita Rogers, your host. That feels odd to say host, not co-host, because for the last 4.5 years, I have co-hosted this podcast with Cecily Dickey, and she's no longer co-hosting. I am the sole host, and it feels strange. So shout out, Cecily. I am missing you today. But we have a good conversation for you today. I wanted to discuss context and why it matters in the conversations we're having online. Being a responsible consumer, following responsible creators, not just following blindly people who want to be the critical thinker for you, but being your own critical thinker and responsibly consuming content. There's been so much happening in our world, and I think we all know that with Charlie Kirk's death. It's consumed the media, rightfully so, to some extent. And there's so much conversation that's being had with so little of the surrounding context. And the dialogue that he had with others is good. It was good to have dialogue. I was writing a blog post the other day, and I just thought, for a generation that gets blamed for being on their phones constantly and only consuming content through their phones, not having in-person conversations, Charlie Kirk was really able to draw that generation out into the public arena to have face-to-face conversations, and that shouldn't be overlooked. And so I want to talk about some of that today because America and abroad both, we are divided on what speech is acceptable, what beliefs are acceptable. We're given snippets of information and told that that's enough. Don't look any further. You don't need any context. You don't need any of the surrounding facts. And many people go on to accept that and yet think, while receiving such little information about any given situation, that they are more informed than ever. And so I invited Heather Knapp and Echo, who you may know online as Echo Unafraid, on to have this conversation with me. And it was a good conversation amongst friends, and I think you will enjoy it and glean some insight from it and hopefully be pushed to have better conversations, to seek that context, which I know you guys already do, but we can all use that push, right? So before we get into it, I just want to remind you to please follow on Spotify, please follow on Apple and YouTube. Those are all areas or platforms that this podcast gets pushed out to, and you won't miss an episode if you do follow along there. Also, please leave a kind review. I appreciate those. It helps get our podcast propelled out to new listeners. Let's get into it. All right. Hi, Echo. Hi, Heather. Thank you for coming on with me today. This, like I said in the intro, this is our first episode, my first episode hour. It's kind of hard to stop saying hour because I'm used to having Cecily on with me, but I've just wanted to let God lead in what I do moving forward with this podcast. And the other day, very interestingly, you guys both posted about the same thing within a day of each other. The Charlie Kirk shooting happened. It's been heartbreaking. And the response has been widely varied depending on what perspective people are coming from. And the interesting thing is not everyone is coming from the standpoint of this is heartbreaking. Some people are celebrating, which is heartbreaking in and of itself. And other people are kind of telling a narrative and maybe using this time a little bit to grow an audience. On another token, other people are maybe speaking to what they want people to see so that the narrative that gets told is the one they want people to hear. And so I know that we've talked on this podcast before, Cecily and other guests, specifically about certain influencers and how they portray information. But we never try to make it about the influencer themselves, but just allowing our audience to better understand the way we should be seeking out information, dialogue, context, all of those things. So I do want to use the post that you guys made. You made independently. You made one, Echo, and then Heather made one, using the jumping off point of Sharon Says So. She's a large influencer with, I think, 1.3 million followers. A lot of her audience is hooked in by the idea that she's coming at things from an unbiased standpoint, which is not true if you follow her closely. And they just trust her. And I would say often blindly. So I guess let's just use that as a jumping off point to start this conversation.
Okay. I mean, I think for me, if we're going to be specific and talk about this scenario that just happened, I actually used to follow Sharon Says So. So I followed her. I think I started following her during the pandemic because actually a lot of my friends were telling me, she's great, follow her. You know, she's more moderate. She's in between. She's not right. She's not left. Like you said, she's unbiased. And so I was like, great, I want to hear what she has to say. But at a certain point, I noticed things that she was posting seemed not to be unbiased. So I started asking questions. And at that point, eventually, after I probed her like a couple different times, I was blocked from her account. And I think that's kind of obviously in that moment where I realized, that's what prompted me now to speak out about what's going on, because it's not just me, it's a lot of other people. I don't know if Echo experienced that, but I do know a lot of other people, and a lot of people that follow my account have expressed similar things.
I mean, with being blocked after questioning or asking a question.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of what led me to post what I did. There's other reasons, but I think that was what initially set me off, that she's not really as unbiased as she claims to be.
Yeah. And for me, it was a little bit different. I had heard her name before. I've actually heard her speak on a podcast, but I've never chosen to follow her. But I was just, after what happened last Wednesday to Charlie, and it's not just about him, it could have been any person. The responses took me. They took me by surprise, and they shook me. I'm absolutely shocked at what I'm hearing. And honestly, the hypocrisy is just really what's gotten to me, is the fact that you can turn on a mainstream media source and hear horrific things about their conservative counterparts or about a viewpoint that they do not believe in. And that is completely dismissed and considered appropriate. And then you take someone like Charlie, who lived his life differently and spoke for a living. Someone he spoke, this is what he did, was dialogue. And when you do that, you're bound to say things that are a little bit crazy, a little bit off the cuff, probably not well thought through and articulated. And his words have been chosen very meticulously by certain people to further a narrative that he cannot defend himself to.
Yep.
Or against. And so I saw her post and I was like, oh, and someone sent it to me and was like, oh, she's the one that claims to be completely unbiased and neutral. And I'm reading this and I'm like, no, because I just listened to 35 clips that said the opposite.
Yep.
And so I'm like, this just felt very intentional. And so the premise behind my post was not to shame her or call her out or make her, I wasn't trying to do any of that. In fact, I didn't say her full name in any of it. I mean, she put it on her slide, so it is there. People can figure out who she is, but it was just, we have to start calling some of these things out gracefully and respectfully, because everything's going crazy right now. And no one knows what the truth is. And everyone wants their worldview formed by 15-second clips or a carousel on Instagram. And if that's the only thing someone saw about Charlie Kirk, they got it completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, your slides specifically went from the standpoint of context matters. And I think that's the biggest problem I had with that post that she made specifically, was exactly what you drew out of it, Echo, was the fact that she took one-liners and said, I watched the video. I watched hours and hours of video. And this is why I think she said, maybe this is, if you're not understanding why people are having a different reaction than you, if people aren't upset by his death, these words that he said are some of the reason why. And I watched all of the video for context. But then she proceeded to post in the subsequent slides one-liners without any context, as if, you know, she's the arbiter of whatever truth is, and she watched it, so she knows the context, but you don't need to know. She didn't even say that this is not out of context. She just said, I know the context, and proceeded to post, which I felt very irresponsible. And
she gave her opinion of that line at the bottom right corner of every slide. Yes. So here's what he said. I'm not going to show it to you, but I'm going to tell you this is what he said. And now I'm going to speak on his behalf and tell you what he meant by it.
Yeah.
And that's not how context works.
Which it would have been very easy to plug the video into every single post so you could just hear the actual words being said. But even in context, even the things he said in context, people still, this is another thing that I've been struggling with lately. I told my husband, I had watched a Ben Shapiro clip, and I'm not a Ben Shapiro fan by any means for several reasons. And some people will take issue with that. But I had watched a clip. He was on a podcast recently, and I cannot remember what it was called, but it was a liberal leaning podcast with three, maybe The Weekend or it was some kind of like off the cuff type name. I can't remember, but he was talking about abortion, and he was defending a pro-life stance. And the way he was speaking to it, the actual podcast host, every single one of them responded separately, but none of them, you could tell, understood anything he was even talking about. They thought they were rebutting his dialogue, his argument, but they weren't. Like, they were not even responding appropriately because they couldn't understand the argument. And so I think a lot of times in this day and age, when, and this speaks to your issue that you brought up, Echo, with the 15-second clips and the, little short sound bites on social media where people are getting their information, with people getting so much of their information from 15-second clips on social media, our intellect is decreasing rapidly. And so now you have people trying to argue their point, like Charlie Kirk, in public, and the people maybe aren't even purposely taking it out of context, but their literacy and understanding of the English language and how to debate is so low that they can't even understand that they're taking it out of context. And that's not to be mean, but I think that that's kind of where we are as well.
Right. And the way I view Charlie's messaging is his whole life is a conversation. And so you're getting there's like a thread, and you're getting these little points of conversation. Yes. And if you're only stepping in on one point, like the part about DEI, and if you only hear one part of the conversation, he's spoken it to it 1,000 times and what his true thoughts and beliefs are. And so when you take one line about, the 4 women that he said are DEI hires, and you hear that, you're like, ooh, this is a little harsh. This doesn't sound very kind and respectful. 100%. But if you listen to the context of what he said in that clip, in the whole stream of his line of thinking on the whole topic, because his life is a conversation, you understand, but you'd have to invest into the person to understand what he means by something. And very few of us are willing to invest into any one person to know where they stand, how they live their life, what they truly care about, where their values are. We just want a soundbite that affirms our worldview. And that's where we're at today.
Which is why they constantly talk about, you are in an echo chamber. Yeah. You want to read what you want to read, and some people want to see what they want to see. And so it's frustrating because I think on top of that too, people just don't want to put the time in. They don't, because openly they will admit that. They don't want to read. They don't want to research. They actually look to influencers, creators, and the news for the information. And most people don't want to go further than that. And I think I loved everything you said, Echo. You spent a lot of time on your post, and I really appreciated that. Mine was honestly more, I was angry when I saw it, and I have been affiliated with Turning Point since I think 2021. I don't claim to be anything other than conservative. I'm very open about that. And I think I was angry because I feel like you were so gracious, Echo. I might sound a little more harsh in how I feel about Sharon, but I actually feel like she's intentionally being deceitful. Why I say that is she is very intelligent, and I feel like she's very wise, and almost preys on the emotions of other people with a lot of posts that she makes. And I've seen this for quite a while. And of course, we can all be guilty on social media of posting things in error sometimes, but I think it's really important to come from a place of humility when you do that and correct those errors. And I just don't personally see that with her, which is why I am very familiar with Charlie. You guys probably have seen, like so many others, all the videos going around that are in full context and how it just doesn't add up. And since I'm so familiar with him, when I saw that, I was like, no, this is a lie. And I actually feel like what upset me most about it was I think she knows that. And I think a lot of times when people post things that trigger emotion in us, it's for a reason. I feel like that's pretty given with like propaganda. It's used. We saw this in the pandemic. They preyed on people's emotions. We only got a little snippet of what's going on. And if you don't look any further into that, you're not going to see the full picture. And I don't think they want you to. And I think that's the point of it.
Yeah, I agree. And just to go back a little bit to what you said, Echo, about, if he said the DEI hire thing, like, oh, that maybe grates a little if you say, oh, you're a DEI hire. But then when you hear the rest of it, it makes total sense. And I completely align with what he said on that video, 100%. But to speak to your point also about social media being where we get information, everything has to have shock value. And so people can complain about the way he delivered information, but he delivered information in a way that it would be received, in a way that it would be passed on. Because let's be honest, people just speaking plainly about things anymore doesn't get traction. And it's unfortunate. And I don't want that world. And it's part of the reason I have long form podcasts and shy away from social media a bit here and there. Like I want to be on social media, but I take so much time to put together content because people take things in the wrong way so often. You have to be so explicit about the way you deliver your information. But there was something else you said there at the end, Heather, that I wanted to get to. What was it? I don't know, lost my train of thought there, but Sharon Says So. When you were talking about that, about her specifically trying to limit conversation, like she shuts down her comment sections every single time, shuts them down, gets the comments. I think she maybe leaves a few. There's no way that she only has like one or two like contrarian comments on each post, but shuts down comment sections. And I really struggle with anyone that does that. She's not the only one. There are several people that do that. But I've only shut down comments on one post I've ever made. And it was in 2020 when I was getting literal threats and hateful messages. And I had to. But I put them back up a year later when because I wanted people to be able to read through them and see what they said, but I just couldn't handle it anymore, But outside of that, I leave my comment sections open. I leave my messages open. I don't block someone unless they're actually like threatening me because I want that dialogue. It sharpens us. Like, what makes you better? What makes you better at arguing your point than hearing a counterpoint and deciding if you really want to defend your own point anymore, or if you maybe agree with the other person?
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say my posts are necessarily controversial as a whole, but there's always people that take issue with them. And with these ones, especially, like I've stayed out of the comment section for the most part. I don't even read them right now, because they are so intense and there's so much arguing and name calling, and it's not productive. But it's telling. I think we learn by watching that. You're like, oh, let's see how the people who agree conduct this conversation versus the person who disagrees. And I'm the same way. I said it in my post, like, it's really easy to eliminate just the threats and leave the comments open. You can just block the person. It's so simple. I very rarely block, but if you do an intention, if you're like blatantly awful, or if you start attacking people and post, 30 comments in my comment section, that's just attack, and it's not productive, you'll eventually get a block.
Yeah.
But we do not have to shut down any conversations. I think that is so counterproductive to what our world needs right now. We need more dialogue, not less. We need to hear other people's point of views and then be able to respond. And then you can respond. Like, it would be better in person or in a long format like this. But this is where people are turning. So if we shut it down, it's such a missed opportunity for all of us to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much value in just, again, the simple fact of being honest with who you are. Because, with this specific experience, her claiming to be moderate, I don't have a problem with if you're right, if you're left, or any of it. But I do have a problem with if you say you are one way, but clearly aren't. And all this information is revealing that. Because I just want to know. And yes, I may lean more right, but I think, like you said, it's so good to seek information. I'm not just looking at the right. I don't just watch Fox News. I actually like watching all of it. I've had people direct message me on Instagram in the past asking me why I follow liberal politicians. Why do you follow Biden? To the point where they've asked me, are you controlled opposition? Like, weird messages where I'm like, no, I think there's so much value in following people that are different than you, because we do need to have those conversations. They do sharpen us, like you said. And I want to know what's going on. I don't want to just look at it from the lens that I see it.
Yeah. And on that token, there's so many people right now that if the government says it, it's like the opposites game. Like, if the government says it, I'm going to believe the opposite. And that's not critical thought either. That is so low bar. That is so like burying your head in the sand and just doing the opposite. That is not critical thinking. That does not make you smarter. It's just so interesting to me. Like, I've just been watching things unfold, and I sadly think that critical thinking is like this all-time low, and that so many people out there that woke up in 2020 that all of a sudden think they're the like gold standard of critical thought just because they disagree with the government. It's just like, oh, it's so frustrating to me to see that, because you just went from one side where you like believed everything they said to the other side where you disbelieve everything that's said, and neither of those is true.
Right? Critical thinking is the ability to take each autonomous thought as an individual and peel back the layers of that point, and then see where you land. But if you put anything in any box, it's not going to turn out productive whatsoever.
No, completely agree.
No, there's very much extremes on both sides. I've really been struggling with this, honestly, as a conservative, and that's why I say it's so good to listen to people that have different ideologies, different thought processes, because I don't agree with everything I see on the right. And sometimes as a conservative, if I say, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that, or if I've ever said anything, for instance, questioning the president, Trump, or whatever it is, it's like, oh, you don't like him? Oh, you don't, wait, are you really a conservative? It's like, yes, but we can still think about things on our own. Like, we don't all have to ascribe to the same thought process about everything.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. If I post anything that I disagree with Trump on, I get messages like, you just don't even understand him, or you don't. And it's just like this attack on them personally because I disagreed with something Trump said. And I'm like, we can't blindly follow anyone. But on the other hand, if I say anything good, I get like, you're just a Trump worshiper. And I'm like, no, I'm definitely not worshiping him either. It's like the middle, and I'm not even going to say there's a middle ground. We'll get to that in a second, because it's not really a middle ground. It's such a hard concept because I'm not in the middle of anything. I'm independently making decisions about every issue, independent of the other issues. I'm using my Christian worldview as my foundation for how I make decisions. I'm using my values, morality, all of those things to make the decisions about each independent issue. I don't make my decisions about an issue whether most of the people on the right agree with it or most of the people on the left disagree with it or vice versa. That's not how we should be making decisions. We shouldn't be making decisions by turning on the TV and seeing what every commentator on Fox is saying, or every commentator on Newsmax or CNN or MSNBC to decide whether we agree or disagree. We should be making decisions on each issue independently of every other issue, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's I'm sure you guys would agree, create division, because nothing honestly gives me more hope than when I do have those conversations with people that think differently than I do. Like just this last week, I was in conversation with a woman who was genuinely asking me, like, I don't understand your perspective on this. Can you please explain it to me? And sometimes when you get those messages, you're like, because sometimes people are sarcastic. I was like, is this a legit message? And I realized she was serious. So we started conversing. And at the end of it, I was like, look, we don't agree on everything. We kind of got to the point where we both did agree that we want the same thing. Maybe we think about it differently and maybe we would arrive there differently, but had this really respectful dialogue. And I was like, thank you, Lord, that there is still hope. Like we can still have these conversations with people if we're willing to be reasonable, if we're willing to be respectful and not go to these extremes that I feel like they're trying to create in the country. It's disheartening. I feel like when you see that and then having those conversations, I'm like, okay, good. This is great. This is what we need.
Yeah.
Well, and it's promoted. The short clips and the lack of context is promoted by social media platforms. Like as a content creator, it tells me if you do a reel, you could monetize that. It never says that when I write a post. I don't do reels because I'm a writer more than I am a speaker. I want to write my thoughts. I want to be able to read them and make sure that I articulated them in the way that I really intend to. And it's just so discouraging to see that all these sound bites are promoted as being short, without full context, without full substance. And so people, I mean, I even find myself, I'm so guilty of this. I did it the other day. I was watching something and I was like, oh, that's good. And I didn't get to the end and I swiped on and I immediately caught myself and I was like, whoa, I don't even know what he said at the end. I think I was going to share it. And I was like, what is going on with me? It was like an out of body experience where I was like, for the first time, I did not even last 15 seconds. And I started tuning out and I had already formed my opinion in the first 5 that this is good. He could have ended it with who knows what, but it's like my attention span. I was like, I don't even want to watch these anymore. Like I want to have a full on conversation, or I want it like at least long form writing, because there is so much more that we need to be talking about.
Oh my gosh. Like I totally relate to that because I have done, so with the first 3 to 5, like well into 2021, 2022, like my account was growing a little bit, having spoke out in the beginning of 2020, very early on, and people were wanting to hear what I had to say. And with that comes people like noticing what post you like and things.
Oh my goodness. So yes, it does.
I always like made sure I read the caption of posts, like not just the post itself, like made sure I was watching the entire video before I liked something, because I didn't want to put my stamp of approval on something that I did not approve of. You know what I mean? Like I could have missed something. And so recently I have caught myself in the same thing where, like you echo, I'm like scrolling or finding myself a little distracted and willing to put my heart on that. And I'm like, no, not my heart, but heart the post,
Right.
And I'm like, no, I gotta get back to making sure I have really looked at everything. And also with a short, like soundbite type thing, this even applies to long form writing, because when I write a blog post, I get SEO prompts that say, nope, your SEO is bad. You need to use shorter sentences and simpler words. I'm like, what? This is not, this is like it'll be like a 7th grade level reading, and they want me to use shorter sentences and sentences and simpler words.
And AI is doing that too, because people love to attack me for my mistakes in my posts, like my grammar errors, or I didn't close the parentheses. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, my mind is going a million miles an hour. I wish I was better at it. I'm not. Like, and sometimes I'll throw it into I'll copy and paste into ChatGPT and say, please fix my errors if I have the time to do that. And it'll tell me every time, this is too long. Can I shorten it for you? And I'm like, no. I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to add the punctuation and like literally, but everything's training us literally, subliminally or intentionally, and all of it, all the above. Everything's saying must be really short, must leave out all context, must be just kind of like a zinger. It's the one-liners. It goes back to the beginning of this thing. Sharon chose one-liners because if she were to write the context on there, no one would pay attention. So in a way, she's a victim of it. Like, she knows that this is what sells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's doing a disservice to everyone in her audience and herself.
Yeah. And the language that was used. There's a few things to add to that. The other side also wasn't presented. So there was no post about people who admired Charlie Kirk, admired him for these reasons. Yeah. That also stuck out to me. And I think to this day, there's no post that has any of that content. But the language now that's used, you guys will relate to this, but it's like, this all started for me, I would say in 2019, same as you, Rita. I started my account in 2020. I followed people like Echo and many others who opened my eyes to many different topics. But we go to these extremes with our language of we're going to label people by this word that's this horrible word that everybody agrees on, like bigot, fascist, anti-vaxxer. There's so many that come to mind. So when you are engaging certain people in the comment sections immediately, rather than conversing and having these conversations, unfortunately, often it's turning into the name calling. You're a bigot. You're a fascist. You're this, you're that. And it's really sad because it's like, you don't even know me. Can we just talk? Can we figure out and it stops. Once we start doing that name calling, ad hominem attacks and all of that, there is no conversation. So that's another sad element to it that I feel like I've noticed on the rise since the pandemic. That continues to proceed and get worse.
All right, you guys are no strangers to how much I love Rocasa Organics products. They are excellent. They are excellent for cleaning my home, for using on my skin, for with my kids. But I love them for another reason. I love them for their values and their willingness to stand up, even when it may be unpopular. I had posted on Erica Kirk's page just a little snippet because I think it is important to reach out to her and to let her know that you're heartbroken with her. But I saw when I was sharing there in the comment section that Rocasa Organics had also replied. They said, "We grieve with you and we fight with you too. You're surrounded by millions determined to multiply his mission. When he passed away, I saw a vision of a seed going into the ground and then thousands upon thousands of sprouts going up after. This is not the end, it's the beginning." And, whether you agree or not, I just find it so refreshing to see a company that is willing to stand behind a Christian and stand up for what they believe and not be afraid of maybe losing a sale or two. So if you appreciate good, clean, organic products that you can feel comfortable using on your family, on your kids, with your pets, in your home, and you also are a fan of a company willing to stand behind their Christian values, go to rocasaorganics.com and use the code BOOMCLAP to save 20% on your first order.
It's true. We don't know how to communicate. Yeah. We don't know how to. We don't know how to say, tell me how you really feel. What is your worldview? How did you get there? What's your story? We just want to read something we disagree with, throw a name out there and walk away as if there's not a real person on the other side.
It's really easy to do that on social media behind a computer though, or behind your phone. Absolutely. I mean, it's so much harder but it's so beneficial to sit down with somebody and have those conversations. Or even if you want to use social media as an example, like DMs with the girl that I talked to last week. Again, we didn't agree, but I was so encouraged just by the fact that we could have that conversation. It ended, you guys, so well that I was like, thank you, God. Like, I needed that. It was like, God bless you. I'm praying for you. Like, it ended so sweetly. And I feel like if we just took the time, like Charlie did, to have those conversations with people that are different than us, it would change everything.
And took the time to ask questions with the intent of actually learning versus just asking so I can respond and give my point of view. No one wants to actually sit and be patient or be curious about another person.
That's so true. The listening part, it's a huge part of it.
Yeah. Everyone has their rebuttal ready to fire back. And it's like, did you even hear what I just said? Because your response in no way correlates with what I just said to you. It's almost like it's pre-written. We've lost the art of communication.
Yeah.
And you lose opportunities. Like, going back to the same conversation, this woman had expressed how she had church hurt and she was really turned off by religion. And I was like, if I didn't just take the time to hear what she had to say, I would have missed that opportunity that I had with her. So I think we do that a lot. And it's something, it could change everything if we just took the time to listen, like you said.
Yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to go next, was how do we have good dialogue? Because we talked a lot about what bad communication looks like and bad creator-consumer relationships when it comes to social media. But what does it look like to have a good creator-consumer relationship? I think open lines of communication whenever possible. I know, like, when you have a big account, it really becomes impossible to communicate with everyone if you're going to be tending to your family and not just on your phone all day. But you can still allow the people who follow you to continue the conversation in comment sections. You can still leave dialogue open for them. I think that's the other thing that bothers me is, like, if you are going to be a creator and you don't have the capacity to interact with every person, sometimes you want to maintain this control on the conversation as if you're the one that oversees this entire viewpoint of whatever you're talking about. But everybody's coming to it with their own viewpoint, and you don't control the people that follow you, nor should you want to, really.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't know. That's just something I've noticed. But anyway, so good dialogue. Another thing I kind of want to talk about, well, there's two more things. I'll actually get to those. I want to say first, one thing, when I used to work in the ICU, so the medical world is a very liberal place. It is very left-leaning. I could tell you some stories. We had a healthcare tech who got in trouble for wearing a Back the Blue shirt under her scrubs one day because that was considered political, and we don't make political statements at work, even though, like, we take care, we would take care of police officers who were shot, but that was a political statement to wear a Back the Blue shirt. But at the same time, our hospital would make pride cakes on Pride Month, and serve cake that is rainbow colored. So it's very interesting how left-leaning the medical industry is as a whole. But our unit, like, we had conversations, and people would say, oh, you shouldn't talk politics and religion at work, possibly, that are listening to this. But we had conversations all the time, and there was open dialogue, and there was a lot of disagreement, but we could always talk, and I felt come away friends. But I had an instance at work one time, and this is leading into, I would like to talk about the words hate speech and the Pam Bondi statement the other day. But I had a friend, he's a gay man, and was definitely not a Trump supporter. He was going to vote for Biden and everything during the 2020 election. And we were having a conversation, and there was another gal and maybe one other, both Trump supporters, working that day. And we were talking about things, and he's like, I just never be friends with somebody who's a Trump supporter. Like, I just hate Trump supporters. And at that point, like, he knew my politics. So it was very interesting that he chose the word hate. And he said, because they hate me and they don't want me, like, they don't like me, they hate me. And I said, I don't hate you. Like, I could never hate you. Like, I care about you. Like, we have all kinds of things in common outside of a lifestyle choice that I don't agree with, but that doesn't mean I hate you or anything, or even am seeking to change you personally. You know, this is just my belief system. And I said, in this conversation, you're the only person that's used the word hate. Like, do you realize that? And instantly the conversation ended and he was so mad and walked away. And we are still, you know, Facebook friends, but I wanted to read the post from the other day after Charlie Kirk died. He said, I didn't realize how many people on my Facebook are pro hate speech until they came out and spoke about Charlie Kirk like he was some angel. It's like, damn, I got to remember, or I've got a member of the KKK as a friend. To be clear, I think gun violence is wrong. His life should not have been taken by a gun, but dying doesn't automatically make you a good person. And so I'm just like, this is so interesting to me. I'm not mad. Like, this is what I would expect him to post after this. But it's interesting to me that somebody can die and other people being sad makes you feel like you have friends that are in the KKK and that that's hate speech. So that's somebody on the left. And then we have Pam Bondi, who came out the other day saying that she's going to attack hate speech. And so my question is, this is a rhetorical question. What constitutes as hate speech? What makes someone feel hated? And why does myself having a different belief than another person, why is that hateful, but the other person having a belief that is different than mine not hateful?
Yeah, I have a couple things to say on that. First, I am so sad that his words cheapen his own life. To assume that his whole entire identity is in his lifestyle, his sexuality. Like, we are so much more complex than that. And we deserve to talk about ourselves in a way that is not our focal point. It just makes me sad that he would view himself that way. I'm sure he's a lovely human. And I personally choose to approach every person I ever meet as that. You are a human being created by God standing in front of me for a purpose. Yes. I don't want to know every little detail about your life that's going to make me think X, Y, or Z. I just don't. I want to get to know you and make that decision. Are you someone that I value you 100% no matter who you are? Are you someone that I want to have like a close, intimate relationship with or friendship? Or are you someone that I kind of are like, yes, I can appreciate you, but I want to keep you at a distance? Like, not far, but like, I see the value in people, and those comments just make me really sad. So that's my first point. And the second point is what is hate speech? Disagreeing is not hate speech. Having a different worldview is not hate speech. Being a Christian is not hate speech. You don't have to agree with it, but it's not hateful. And I think that really makes people uncomfortable. That's why they're so uncomfortable with Charlie, because he was very confident in his worldview and it was rooted in his Christian faith. And for those who do not believe it, it is hate. And that's biblical. We've been told that we will be persecuted for that. Like, there's there's this lack of understanding and curiosity about why someone believes the way they believe. They would rather, instead of digging in a little bit deeper past the surface, they would rather just say, you are a Christian. You don't agree with my lifestyle. Therefore you hate me. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
But on the flip side, they can't see that by them saying, you are a Christian, you don't agree with my lifestyle, therefore you hate me, is the same as, they're saying the same thing to us, and they can't see that it can't be that way. You can't have one-sided hate speech when you're speaking the same way of the other people. It just blows my mind that we're so shallow and can't see that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting what she had said, because we have to really look at what are people saying. And you see a lot of different responses, and I don't agree with a lot of them, but some of them were simply just saying, I don't care. I don't have empathy for Charlie Kirk. Others were actually violent. So it kind of depends on what the person said. But I think some of the comments I was seeing where people were losing their job was simply for just saying, I don't have empathy for him. I have no emotion. And while I think in moments like this in general, it's better to just be silent if you don't like someone that was just murdered. That's what they chose to do. I think it's a slippery slope here because, like you said, who gets to define what hate speech is? I think it's really dangerous when we start going to this point, even now on the right, where we're like, well, actually, you said you have no empathy, you're getting fired. Like, no, we do have free speech. There's a difference between
firing is one thing. That's on the employer to decide whether they want to employ somebody who is seen by the public as saying something. So I'm okay with that. It's more so like the government saying, like,
well,
the
government coming after. Yeah, that's scary. And I also think there's an element to that with the employer where if you clearly identify who you work for, because Rita, like I had to be, and you did too, really careful during the pandemic. I never put where I worked in my Instagram. I did not say it because they were coming after us. If we identified where we worked, it was like, yes, then you're opening yourself up to be fired, because they will say, well, your views, you say you work here, your views don't align with our company or our hospital, so you are fired. So I think in general, people need to be wise about identifying who they work for in their public profile where they're posting this stuff. That's just not using good discernment.
Yeah.
Well, and anytime the pendulum swings to the extremes, this is what we get. We have 2020 where if you spoke out against the COVID vaccine or said that, hey guys, we got a problem here with mandates or something doesn't seem right, the pendulum's over here and all these people, the nurses, you guys are getting fired. And now we're like over here. Oh, you said something about Charlie. Like, it's like, whoa, we are living in the extremes so much so that everything is just a reaction. Yeah. And none of us know how to come back to center and like pause and consider what we're saying and like hear each other. Cause we're just like, oh, you said it. Oh, you said it. Oh, we're getting you now. We're getting you now. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys, we have to stop this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And pause and remember, like, people are getting their information from those sound bites. So if I see that this person, my friend, shared this on Facebook and they have no empathy for the fact that he was murdered, take the time then, if you want to have a conversation with that person, because most likely they saw that soundbite that you saw where it looks like Charlie Kirk is racist. It looks like Charlie Kirk is a bigot, but is that actually who he was? No, we can all do that to each other and define each other by simple things when we don't even really get to the root of who that person is.
Yeah. For every one harsh thing he said, there was 25 counter ones that spoke highly of any given population.
Yep.
But no one wants to hear that because that's not triggering enough.
No, and also, are they even seeing it? Because the algorithm feeds you what it wants, what you click on, what you want to see. That's what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yep. There was one instance I saw this week of somebody actually losing their job that I saw what was said and I just was like, oh, like the way that it was handled in that situation. I'm like, there are times where you can take somebody in and probably counsel them and help change their heart in a way that is better than firing. Like there might be more of a heart change if you're like actually just kind of discipling somebody through this. So I think case by case basis, but just in general, the hate speech thing really got me. I'm like, this is both sides again, kind of doing the same thing to each other. And I know people will kind of cringe when I say that because you're like, the right is different than the left and the left is the left has been shooting at the right, literally. And I'm like, yes, I get that. And I'm not saying everything's one and the same. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying we do not want to handle things in the same way as the people that we disagree with. We want to handle things better. We want to take a higher road. And I know that's not always possible. There's a heat at the moment. There's passion. There's anger sometimes, but we do have to do better.
I don't think we have to say a single thing. I think our response, I mean, the videos I've seen of these kids worshiping on college campuses, the whole world has shown up in a way that I've never seen before. And it's like, no one has to say a thing.
I agree with that.
People just need to witness what it looked like in 2020 when tragedy happened and people got upset. Mm-hmm. What was that response? What is the response today when someone that a whole other side loved got shot? It is a totally different response. Like a little less words sometimes speaks volumes. Like less words, more action.
True.
Like, let's not burn it down. Let's get together and pray and worship and show the world that we are called to look different. We are called to respond different. God changes our hearts. Like we're hurt and sad and there's some anger there, but our response looks entirely different.
Yes. Into that.
Yeah, I think
you can go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think that has been my biggest takeaway this last week is just what is most important to me in my life, because life is so fragile. And how could we as a people or humanity not see what happened and recognize that? Like that could be any of us. He had such a huge platform, such a huge influence. So obviously I feel like he was more at risk, but it's just a huge wake up call, like you said, to really recognize what is most important in your life. And I've been trying to do that the last week. And I think it's hard too, because people do expect you, if you have a platform, they do expect you to say something. And I saw a lot of influencers I follow that were silent and then they were getting attacked for being silent. And part of me is like, people are grieving just because you follow this person and they're an influencer and you have this expectation. Like this kind of rocked everybody's world the last week. And I was super emotional, and I know like all of us were. So to have that expectation, I also think is unfair when everybody handles things differently. And I think there's a time to be silent and just process it too.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we need to really be careful on the expectations we put on strangers to help us heal, to help us process. It's unfair. If someone I willingly put out posts in moments like this because I feel like it is a calling of mine. I feel like it's a gift of mine. The daily mundane stuff, where the fillers throughout the year when nothing big is happening, I'll share just to be around. But those things don't matter. Like I show up in these because I choose to, not because it's expected of me. And not everyone has that capacity or that calling. And we cannot expect every person we think we know on the internet to show up for us in a way that we're not willing to show up for ourselves or others.
Oh, yes, 100%. Like I felt that this week because I haven't posted on social media. I've taken the summer off because I, like you said, don't have the capacity right now. I can't find a spare moment. And if I'm going to post, I need to have time and clarity to say exactly what I want to say. I can't post in 5 minutes. I've never been like that. I need to have time and clarity. And so it's weighing on me heavily because I know some people are probably like, Rita doesn't care about this. But if you listen to the podcast, you would know that we were recording when we got the news and we talked about it, and so the expectations and not having the capacity and all of that, I'm feeling that. So I really appreciate that, Echo. All right, today I'm going to share with you about my favorite protein powder, Prime Protein from Equip Foods. Love this stuff. If you follow my email list, you already know, and probably message me like, why don't you like stevia, Rita? But I will tell you, I just don't think we should be eating stevia all the time. And it's in so many supplements. And so I was so happy to find Prime Protein. I had been looking at them for months before I finally tried them out. And it's as good as I expected it to be. But it is just, you can get flavors from them. You can get flavors that are sweetened if that's your thing. But if it's not, and if you're like me and you want something that's just a single ingredient, the unflavored version, Prime Protein, grass-fed beef isolate powder. I try to get most of my protein from Whole Foods, but I am busy. And so like everyone else, every once in a while, you're having to put some protein powder in a smoothie. I use this often. I love it. And I love this, a single ingredient packed with 20 grams of protein. So you can go to equipfoods.com/Rita15 or just equipfoods.com and use the code Rita15 to save 15% on your Prime Protein order. The last thing I kind of want to cover is you made a post, there is no neutral. And I absolutely agree. And that's why I clarified, I'm not like in the middle. There's not like this middle ground. It's independently taking on issues. But I told you before we recorded, you know, I say this to my oldest all the time. If you are a Christian, you're familiar with apologetics. I'm sure that you have stumbled upon the statement that there is no neutral. There's indifference. There is lacking information to form an opinion, but there's not really any such thing as neutral.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting one for me because Heather, like you said, you're like, I'm a conservative, and Rita, I believe you are too. And I am 100% willing to admit that I have towed the line of trying to have a foot on both sides. I don't want to take a stand sometimes. And even though I have really strong opinions and convictions, I'm guilty of doing that. And I think something that's happened to me in this last week is like, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't love labels, but I don't want to sit here and be like, especially after we're going to circle back to the Sharon post. It's like, I don't want to tell my audience that they're coming to me for a neutral worldview, because they're not. I have my own lived experience that it doesn't necessarily fit in a perfect box of, liberal or conservative, but I have a very specific worldview from my own experiences. And I don't want people to think they're coming to me and getting a conservative worldview or a liberal worldview, but also the neutral is just a lie. It's a lie. And if I'm honest with myself, like, especially since 2019, if you were to ask 2019 Echo where I stood on things and where I stand now, it's entirely different. And so being able to, that post was more me being able to admit to myself, like, neutral's it's not even a real thing.
Yes.
If you're hearing someone say they're neutral, you're going to have to peel back the layers a little bit more, because they're lying to you, because we do have really big opinions.
Yeah. I even cringe a little bit when you say conservative, because that's a label I would have worn probably most of my life. But I would say currently, I just don't like a label, because I don't know what other people's interpretation of that label is. And if I say I'm a conservative to Heather, that means one thing. If I say that to somebody else, that means something completely different. I would say more so politically, I lean conservative libertarian, and I'm backed by my Christian worldview. Like, I would say my label is Christian, and outside of that, that's my measuring stick for all the issues. But
I think
that's good.
That's what honestly stood out to me so much about what happened to Charlie, is that while the world is saying, and I kind of said this in my post, while the world is saying that, and even Christians are saying, well, he was killed for his politics. But those of us who are Christian and know the Bible and know why we believe certain things or align with certain things politically actually stems from our Christian worldview. That is why it rocked me to my core this week. And probably I'm assuming the same for you guys. Like, no, a lot of the things that he didn't agree with, the reason why is because it's rooted in our faith. And so that just really got to me, and it created a lot of conversations with me and my kids. And I feel like even talking about apologetics, I don't approach anything with my kids simply because we live in a world that is so basic. I'm like, no, I want to have these conversations. Not only am I going to teach you what we believe and why we believe it, but I want to talk to you about these other religions too, so that you don't hear about this stuff for the first time outside of the home. Let's talk about it. Like, so whether it's politics, whether it's religion, whatever it is, I think it's so much better to approach things that way, no matter what side you're on. We have to have these conversations, and we have to get to the root of, with Charlie Kirk, he wasn't killed for his politics. He was killed for his religious beliefs and his biblical worldview that ultimately affected his politics.
Yes. That is true. Yep. And just, back to no neutral. If any of our listeners are sitting there kind of wrestling with, is there a neutral? From a Christian worldview perspective, in Hebrews, it says the word of God is living and sharper than a double-edged sword. And it's able to separate, judge, and expose. No neutral, right? And it also says, did I say Romans or Hebrews? Hebrews?
You said
Hebrews.
Hebrews.
I said Hebrews. I'm like, did I say the wrong thing? In Hebrews 5, it calls out people who ought to have knowledge and understanding and be able to teach, but are still requiring milk instead of solid food. And it's basically calling out people that don't grasp what God has revealed through Christ, and they're not mature enough to discern between good and evil. No neutral, so we need to understand that. And I actually found an article earlier. I'm going to read this here. And then if there's anything else you guys want to add, but it was from Grace Bible Church. So I don't know anything about this church. I don't know if I agree with them, but I agree with them on this paragraph at least. So I'm not promoting this church or anything, but it says a myth of neutrality. Non-believers frequently attempt to coerce their Christian opponents to adopt a mentality in which both the parties are looking objectively at the facts. We call this compromise position neutrality. It's widely thought in the Christian world that through reasoning in a neutral way, in which all biases are left out of the picture, the believer can, through argument, beat the non-believer at his own game. In other words, the Christian can objectively, using only the facts, make a case that the word of God is authoritative, what this approach fails to realize is that both the non-believer and believer rely on their respective ultimate faith commitments in order to interpret the facts. Thus, there is no such thing as neutrality. And to assume neutrality essentially means that the Christian is exchanging his ultimate authority, the truth of God, for a lie, the fundamental principles of the world. And I would agree with that based on the fact that you can have objective fact. You can report objective fact. The house is on fire over there, right? But when it comes to interpreting the facts, interpreting the why, interpreting the information, and communicating it, it is really hard to remain neutral and just objective without adding in any subjectivity, because we all come from different backgrounds with different experiences, and some of us have the same worldview, but many of us have different worldviews. So neutrality when communicating information is somewhat impossible. And that kind of circles us back to the beginning when we're talking about the specific post initially and how a person on social media can claim no bias. There is no way that anybody you follow can report the information without bias. If they're telling you that, that's an outright lie. They can tell you the facts, but they can't communicate anything outside of the factual information without bias.
Yeah, no, that's totally accurate. And I think often, and I'm sure you guys feel this way, just like we were talking about, there's an expectation when you're a creator, influencer, or have a platform that you need to speak into this issue or this issue. And I think there's another element that is people will say, because even with Echo, for instance, I started following her I think in 2019. And there were these people that I followed that I was like, I was learning so much. And I was like, man, how do they know this? Like how? And I feel like as a Christian, the Lord opens our eyes when he chooses to. And so when people are like, man, that person is so wise, or why, how does this person know this? How does this person know that? Like genuinely with all my heart, because this is kind of how it happened for me. I feel like the Lord opened my eyes when he chose to. And so the wisdom or discernment that maybe others see in me or in you or others, like as a Christian, it doesn't come from me. Mm-hmm. It literally, I feel like it's like, God, thank you that you showed me this or that, but it's not within my own wisdom. I feel like it's through scripture, it's through prayer, it's through just the Lord being sovereign and allowing my eyes to be opened. And I think that's possible for every person when they're ready. But, yeah, I would just encourage your listeners to seek the truth those ways. That for me personally has been the most influential thing in my life. Reading the books of the Bible that speak to wisdom, Proverbs, etc. Like those are just so helpful to navigate the world we live in and the culture we live in.
For sure. Anything you want to add, Echo?
Not necessarily on that, but I did want to kind of close for myself by saying that I'm really thankful for Charlie. I don't agree with everything he said, but I am really thankful because he has brought out a new conviction in me and a new bravery in me, and has made me confront in the last week where I stand on things and what kind of impact I want to have and what kind of message I want to send my children. And sometimes it takes really hard life events like this to really shake us up. And I feel like I'm in a snow globe right now and I've been shaken up. I'm like, what am I speaking to? How am I sharing my faith? It's not something I share because I used to be a pastor's wife for 10 years. And then the last 10 years, I've been like all over the place on where I land with certain things, not necessarily like the foundations of my faith, but just different aspects. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have time to waste. And so I'm really thankful that his life and his death, as tragic as it was, it's really I know it's made me think and wanting to speak in different ways. And I know there's going to be a ripple effect from that just, I'm excited for tomorrow. Yeah. For the first time in a while, I'm like, wow, we could really, even though there's still so much hate, we could really change some things. And I'm really grateful for that.
Well, as someone who follows you, that excites me to see the content you're going to make.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I agree so wholeheartedly, Echo. I mean, I'm 42 and for the last several years, I've kind of thought like when I think of things about like me as an 80-year-old, like that perspective, like what would 80-year-old Rita say to Rita right now? Like what's she going to be disappointed about or excited about? And like, I don't want to get to be 80 years old and realize I spent all this time on my phone and didn't look at my kids or something, that's kind of what I would think about. And so I'm not going to spend all this time creating stuff. I need to just be focusing on my kids. And, now being 42, I'm like, the other thing that scares me is not living out the purpose God put me here for. And I've always felt called to something, and I know that people appreciate when I speak and appreciate when I put content out online. And so I'm watching Charlie and like all of the things that he did, and he was 31 years old. And I realize, as a mom, life looks a little different and things, but at the same time, like, dang, am I lazy? And so there's this other thing coming out now too within me that I don't want to get to be 80 years old and realize I didn't live out my calling. So I don't know. I can echo your excitement going forward. So anyway, and your thankfulness for what he did and what he's brought out in you. So thank you ladies very much for coming on for this conversation. If you want to tell everybody where they can find you outside the podcast.
Okay. You guys can follow me on Instagram at California Roots Tennessee Boots. It's Cal Roots Tennessee Boots.
Awesome. And I'm on there as Echo Unafraid.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to find me outside the podcast, you can find me at Boom Clap Podcast on Instagram, Rita Rogers Co on Instagram, or RitaRogersCo.com. Thanks for listening.